I have been refraining from posting this for some time, even back in the older days of Antarctica on X and Pol several years ago. I figure now is a good time as any. I stopped myself from posting because I feared gang stalking or being traced, if there was any truth to what I'm about to post. Now, I just think fuck it. This post will most likely go unnoticed anyways, and gang stalking is just an irrational fear for myself. My knowledge of Antarctica comes from my best friend of 50 years now. Though we grew up together, we grew up in very different conditions. He was part of the rich family who owned one of the largest factories in my hometown. I was the opposite, just a naive kid playing around town when we first met. We were best friends then, and I still consider him my best friend now, despite him traveling around the world and going to Princeton, and doing whatever he wanted. The point is, he is a 31st Mason, and has lived a life way beyond I can imagine. Despite all of this, he always comes to visit, sometimes several times a year, sometimes not for years. But when he does, we usually get smashed and trashed, hookers, blow, even he brought me DMT and other crazy shit. Okay, enough backstory. Time for the goods. This comes from him. His story hasn't changed, though he only told me this roughly 5 years ago, and told me shit would be happening in less than a decade. This starts with a religion. And at first, I rolled my eyes. But as he talked more, it sent shivers up and down my spine. So the Masons have been in charge of controlling and releasing information to the public at reasonable levels. That is what he told me the majority of his Masonic duty entails. And the first piece of media they altered was the Bible. A major part of the Bible was cut out from the Revelations, revealing where the Antichrist and the Beast would emerge from. He said the section they cut out was the most important. So, the Revelations stated that the last Antichrist would be the total opposite of Jesus, spreading disease from an old age, which turned most humans into zombies, or some weird shit he'd said. Anyways, he said this Antichrist was trapped in a frozen wasteland with magnificent buildings and was being held by kilometers of ice. He doesn't know exactly if this is an individual. Even the Masons think it is a virus of some sort. The Bible didn't specifically state, but he said this is where the saying comes from, when hell freezes over. Hell is already frozen over. Once hell is defrozen, then real hell will be unleashed. He told me these temples in Antarctica have been explored by a group of people in control in the government. The same group is doing crowd control methods all around the world, have been digging, hoping to find this Antichrist buried in Antarctica, because some believe it is the key to immortality. For another small section of the Bible did refer to the everlasting life, or Garden of Eden, being hidden right beside this Antichrist. And in order to bring about the last days, it had to happen anyways. So, teams have been digging, blowing up shit, covering up, and stopping visits. Though he said you can visit the outside portions of Antarctica, only those who know will ever get to see those temples. And constantly destroying any information leaked from this expedition. He told me several years ago some Russian thought he found a portion of the immortality and injected himself with an ancient virus they discovered in a vial in one of the temples. He even cringed when telling this story and said the guy instantly turned blue and froze over. Everyone ran out, and when they returned, his body was gone. Now, they only work in those giant radioactive suits. He said they had to replace him with a body double to avoid drawing notice or some shit in his real life. He went into great detail about how big and complicated those temples expand across the entire continent, and he calls it a big giant city. He said from one temple where you enter, there are hundreds of rooms, hallways, traps, all types of symbols and shit on the walls, large books of ancient texts no one can read, vials upon vials of random liquids, which they can't even remotely identify. But he said most contain living organisms in these vials, and they're protected behind large traps, shit from Indiana Jones. He said they've already lost over 500 people exploring, and now they're using robots but shit is so complicated you have to move blocks to open doors, solve riddles. I don't know, he said it's truly a giant mousetrap. There are keys and legends on the walls, and a single room can contain up to 100 different keys for solving to open up a trap. It's crazy shit, and they have the smartest people working on it. And they send in third world people to go open the doors when they think they solved it. It's shit that I still don't know what to make of. So some other stuff he told me. Most movies and books are representing what they think will happen when it's discovered. Like Transformers with the frozen bot, forget his name. All these zombie movies and all the other shit in the media. I'm not sure if you guys care. Essentially, I have crazy stories from them all of these years. A lot of examples I forget because of our drunken binges. But this is the gist of it. Don't know if it confirms anything for you guys, but it's my 2 cents. And just for you, Anon, I will type out everything I know. He said Game of Thrones, one of the only shows I watched, so I can relate to what he said, shows what they think will happen when they discover this Antichrist. They aren't sure it is, but the White Walkers are meant to get normies ready to fight against a possible zombie outbreak. And why they think it is soon, a quote he kept repeating from the Bible was, "After the War of Wars, and after the Winter of Winters, is when everything would happen." He thinks the War of Wars was from World War II up until now, non-stop fighting across the earth. And the Winter of Winter refers to the ice of Antarctica decreasing and opening up parts of Iceland still frozen. Another crazy fact he said they know is there will be Jesus or Christ right beside the Antichrist, and you will get to choose when it's first discovered. He thinks it'll be 2 vials beside each other, and you'll have to drink one. After the Russian, they put in a ban from ingesting any shit from these temples to prevent anything from happening. It's truly a clusterfuck of arguments because everyone wants to be the first to keep discovering. But they are in disagreement of what to do with all these random vials they keep finding. He said each other has random living organisms inside of it, and it's bacteria and viruses we have never seen before. Shit which makes apples rot in minutes, and monkeys explode diarrhea and shaking to death, but the coolest thing he said, was there is a frozen giant skeleton in golden armor in one of the temples. It's holding the skull of a giant reptile. The giant looks to be over 30 feet tall, and the reptile's head is roughly the size of a van. It's incredible to see, and unbelievable. He mentioned some Jewish show on TV called The 100. I haven't seen it. But he said the leader takes a chip or drinks something which gives them the recollection of all the knowledge previously, and lets them control the others with their minds. That is what they think is in the immortality vial. So the media and shit they keep releasing is just them theorizing everything and making entertainment of it. It's funny because it's the truth in a way, he said, and the public just eats it up. On a long binge, he did tell me everything they found so far. It must have been hours he was talking, and lots of shit just went through me because it was so unbelievable. Aside from the traps, the walls are covered in symbols and images. Shit which has supposedly happened, shit which hasn't happened, and shit just no one knows what to think about. He said these images, though drawn in some ink, which looks like it's printed on a piece of paper, has predicted many events recently. And the Illuminati card game, with this piece of 4chan I do enjoy threads about, were actually pictures on the walls of these temples. He said they look so lifelike. Even though being drawn, they had to release them in a game because these events were coming true over time. And they keep coming true, which is scary and crazy. For them, it's just another piece of media which flies over the heads of the population. But for them, it's a giant timeline. He said there's tons of shit hidden in media, which they can find and subtly hide. But it doesn't matter to anyone because we just keep consuming shit and not caring. Nor would we care unless we saw it in real life. I was amazed when he mentioned this game because I actually own it and took it out and we played for hours. He explained a shit ton of cards which happened, and cards which they think will be happening soon. He said each and every card is a picture from the wall, and nothing's made up. So, which are the ones that he thinks are going to happen next? They aren't sure, but they constantly hide these hints in TV. Even for them, it's like a giant mess of information they are constantly working on. He said the pictures are one thing, but there are hundreds of books and scripts which contain shit no one understands. He educated me on the Voynich manuscript. It's one of the books which they found, and made its way into the public. No one knows what it means or anything, but they think it was ancient methods for making medicine or other stuff no one actually knows. He mentioned like 9/11 was in a temple several times, and they did attempt to prevent it, but somehow there was a group in the government which made it happen because of interests. They even hinted on The Simpsons and several other shows it was coming. But the public can't make connections or believe anything. He says the more shit they release, the less likely the majority of the population believes. Instead, they focus on working, shitting, eating, and making money. It's nothing but entertainment. This is what he said. He said there is a connection between how much shit from the temples they put into the media, the more likely it is to be successful. Even the symbols, which are littered across all media, Illuminati symbols, comes from these temples, and other temples from the world. But in these temples, they appear hundreds of times in random order, like a language. So they just throw it out into the media, and we buy it up. Not even they know what they truly mean, but they just keep filling our media with it, and we just keep consuming it. They have no idea whether these stories happened or will be happening either. There is no order in how they appear in the temples. It's all scattered, so they're scared that there are beasts hidden deep down in the temples. Another interesting thing he said was you cannot look through the walls. So normally they could use imaging and radar and other technologies to map out temples. These ones just appear as one giant black blimp with all technology that they attempt to use. They are literally mice and a mousetrap, making their way through this maze, piecing together lots of info, and hoping to get lucky. The amazing part, he said, of the temple is how complicated it is constructed. From the 500 people who died, 400 are still missing. So the puzzles and shit you do to open doors actually open up traps where you fall into or something. And those 400 have disappeared into the temple somewhere, and not a single one has been found yet. They fear they have become infected with a zombie virus. For there are symbols showing death all over the temple. But they fear once they reach a certain level, they will find all of those lost in a weird state, dead or infected or something. Also, there is no noise in the temple. When you talk, it's a very flat tone, and there is no outside noises. It's like a dead silence, which makes it really fucking scary to work in. Most of those who are deciphering will not enter the temples under any circumstances. That's why they send the third worlders to go in and try to open shit up. He said all the most important stuff has been removed. They kept the fluff which keeps people calm and going to church. Everything in the Bible is true, with many parts missing. He actually mentioned that Noah's Ark was based on Antarctica, and they expect to find some evidence of it once the snow melts. A part he mentioned was that the Antichrist was at war with God, and that is why he got frozen. But he said God isn't what he think he is. He's not a man, but a living organism, capable of hive mind-like thoughts, which can see the future. So God, the spirit mind hive, warned Noah of the flood ice age coming, but didn't warn the Antichrist. I don't know because it went over my head as he was talking, but he said these two have been at war for a long time, and humans are just the vessels which they use. That is why Christ and the Antichrist will be located near each other. He said the Matrix told the story as the blue pill and the red pill. One will be the Antichrist and bring about the death. The other will be life. Though he admitted they have zero clues as to which is which, and where they are in the temples. There is a giant power struggle in those working on the temples, because many are offering to be test dummies, thinking they will get immortality. But many are scared of what will come about. OP, I am the foremost expert on the subject. My father was stationed in Antarctica at McMurdo Station. He's told me things. Y'all want to hear some fucked up shit? I'm using a name because it's easier for me to keep track of this shit. Some background. My dad is a doctor, was stationed at McMurdo for 11 months in the 90s. Not saying what year because he was the only doc there, and y'all could track me down. Frequently went out on scientific expeditions. First and foremost, there were some areas people just didn't go to. They weren't environmentally hazardous. They were just avoided for one reason or another. When my dad asked one of the researchers who had been there for 10 years, he went pale and told him to shut up. It was about 30 miles south, 10 east of McMurdo. They took a 5-mile detour around whatever the hell was there. So already, things are adding up. There were little outposts here and there. Think a metal tube sticking out of the ground with a hatch in the side. They were supposedly emergency and climate weather shelters. But the walls were to the thing, and they were always locked. Secondly, was a weird structure. My dad said one time they were cresting a hill near the spot they avoided, and a gray building with a white roof was in the distance, and that it didn't look like the normal shelters they used, but almost like an office building. Also, sorry about spelling and shit. Think faster than I can type, and I want to get this out there. Thirdly, there were the Striders. Big fucking 5-legged things that crawled across the continent at night, or in snowstorms. There were sightings from the military personnel there. Most of McMurdo is US Navy. My dad had a Polaroid of one of the footsteps in a track from one of the Dackers they had, and it was easily a foot deep into the snow that was already packed down from a 10-ton truck. Also, here's what the normal shelters look like. Big fucking 5-legged things. How big? Does the thing from the pic resemble it? Like Strider from Half-Life big, as far as they know. Footsteps at least 30 to 40 feet apart. And now, if you have ever played Pathways into Darkness, one of the enemies resembles it, but only just think pic related, but white/gray. 7 to 8 stories tall, and 5 legs instead of 2. Agreed, it sounds stupid, but what? A fast-growing, possibly supernatural apex cryptid with a white spindly body that only moves in low visibility. I'm only parroting what I heard. I would say it is maybe 20 to 30 feet tall, but I wasn't there. My dad's theory is that while taking bore ice samples, we found something. Dug it up and one or more escaped. They grew into what roams Antarctica, and we shut down the continent because of it. 7 stories. Fucking hell, they're big guys. How come no one has made it public about them? Or any photo? Also, be careful with your wishes, Anon. Might be the Striders are there to watch after worse things. Do continue. KK, my guy. So, as I said, my dad was a doctor. Got yelled at by a superior officer who said they didn't need none of you unwanted smart types around here. Guy was a prick and hated anyone who wasn't a grunt or a researcher. Let leak to my dad that he was replacement for a doc who had snooped around. Tried to scare my dad and shit. Guy was a total douche. One day, a guy who my dad knows for a fact isn't at McMurdo or any of the nearby bases comes in, escorted, with severe lacerations. He is told that the guy fell. My dad calls bullshit. The cuts were too clean to be ice or rocks. Plus, no debris left in wound. Guy's delirious, and while he's under anesthesia, starts talking about things he probably shouldn't be saying. Something about, "We let them loose," and "They were frozen. We thought they were dead." He starts to say something else, but the guards yell at him to shut the fuck up and gag him. That's right. They gagged a guy who is only getting oxygen from a mask. My dad flips and rips it off, yelling at them and asking what the fuck they were doing. The guard sticks his M16 in my dad's face, forces him back to his quarters, and doesn't let him out till the dude is patched up and waiting on the next plane from South America. Oh yeah, but after that, he started taking notes of stuff. He had an Apple IIe he used for flight sims, and he started keeping track of information he gathered. Said he hasn't looked at it in years. I'm going to try and get it out and running, and see what I can find on it. Till then, not much else I know about what went on. He said he saw the Striders a few times in the winter, but kinda hard to prove. Says he's forgotten a lot about those days. If I can find the computer, I can get more stories. Other than that, not much else. One time, they hit something with a dagger, which was a pretty big deal since there aren't many penguins in the Antarctic. And when they got out, the researcher who told my dad to shut up forced him back into the car. Dad said it looked like one of the things from the Cloverfield movie. But, you know, all fucking crushed to bits. So spindly little legs and the like. Says he thinks it was buried under the surface level of snow, which is why they didn't see it. Snowstorms are a hell of a lot worse than people make them out to be. As I said, that's when people see the Striders. But there is banging on the doors, windows, walls, everything. Dad said he thought he saw one of those small things hit his window and bounce off once while he was playing an FA/18 sim. My bad. It was an 11SI, not 11E. I would say that with both the fact that they ran one over in summer and that they are most active in winter, it's very likely that these things like extreme cold. I have a hell of a lot more documents with my dad's name I could take photos of, but a quick Google reverse image will show that it is original in many ways. I'm going to see if I can get the 2SI to run. Give me a few guys. I'm going to take a picture and censor the name of the plaque my dad got from being stationed at McMurdo. We'll have the whole X and the date thing in it to prove I ain't lying. As promised. And proof he was at McMurdo. I can't get it running tonight. I'm honestly really tired and I have work tomorrow morning. But my dad literally just woke up, and I asked him, and he told me something he didn't already tell me. So, people die in Antarctica. It happens. It's cold and accidents happen. Every time someone died during the winter snowstorms though, he had to wait for them to thaw and sew them back together. Similar wounds from the person who dipped in the summer. Except one man, another he didn't know, who was missing his lower half. This guy was carted in by similar guards, but not the same. His intestines had spilled out, and my dad had to sew on fake clothes on the lower half after sealing up this guy's torso. They then dressed him up in battle dress. The official cause of death is hypothermia, but we both know that's bullshit. His lower abdomen from the end of the ribcage down had been ripped off violently. There's shit out there, Anons. You better fucking believe it. So I asked him a few more questions about injuries, and he said a lot of lost limbs from frostbite, a few cuts here or there. Those two were the only two that stuck out to him. There were a lot of lacerations on people who did stuff outside in the winter, and the only ones allowed out were a certain group of Arctic warfare soldiers and the researchers. He said talking about all of this has gotten his memory going. Said he grabbed one of the researchers' journals one time, and it had all kinds of diagrams of shit that didn't look anything like any animal there that was supposed to be out there. This is where he got his descriptions for the Striders and the spiders. He cornered one of the researchers once and questioned her. She got really stiff and refused to tell him anything. And he later got a talking to from his CO about how useless he was and shit. And how, if there was another incident, they were sending him back stateside. He ignored this though, and when his CO was away, he looked through his files. This guy patrolled the whole base at the time. Found documents regarding certain operations during the winter months, and that there were requisitions for ammo. He got caught though, and this is what led him to being kicked back to the States. He got court-martialed, but because he never signed an NDA, and he never found anything bad, they just docked his pay and sent him on his way. Other people's stories. Once they told my dad he was being shipped out, despite the fact that it was a day he was supposed to leave. He stopped caring what people thought and started gathering stories from everyone he could. Most of it was, I saw this or I saw that, but nothing he could really work with. Then came in Jones, not real name. Jones was one of the Arctic warfare specialists. Green Beret. The guy was autistic, strong as fuck, and smart as hell. Only got through all the training because he could hide himself. And while being regarded, could do a lot other members of his team couldn't do. But the one thing Jones had that the others didn't was a conscience. Jones felt bad for what he did, and my dad had an undergrad degree in psychology. They had an agreement. Jones hurts himself to get sent to my dad. My dad helps Jones get stuff off his chest. Everyone is happy. His buddies don't know he's going to a shrink, he gets to feel good, and the CO gets to have a functioning soldier. One time, Jones wakes my dad up about 3 days before my dad is supposed to ship out. It's 2 a.m. Jones just came back from some mission. Says he needs to talk to my dad. My dad tells him to fuck off, not this early. And Jones puts something on my dad's chest. It's the leg of one of these small things. My dad freaks, and Jones puts a hand over his mouth and tells my dad a story. This is where it all comes together. Anons, clench your ass. No bathroom breaks until the ride has stopped. Some of you may say this story sounds like a story with supporting information leading to a climax. Fuck you. Gotta make it sound good for YouTube, eh? Jones proceeds to tell my father the most fucking incredible story I have ever heard. It confirms many theories on 4chan and IRL. And it proves American collision with China's human trafficking. And it confirms the reason for tunnel warfare training US Marines recently undertook. Y'all ready? Jones gets woken up at 5 a.m. the previous day by a squad leader. Let's call him Jack. Jack tells him to get his ass up. To clarify, these are SFOAD with a total of 12 men in the squad. And that they're going somewhere. Jones expects an expedition with some researchers, but they don't go to the military Dakar. With a hole up top for a gun turret, they have an M134 minigun inside the truck because it's technically demilitarized, but not really. And load up their gear. They leave and make a beeline for the area everyone avoids. My dad figured this out when he said the heading was southeast. They get to this office building and it looks sorta like PIC related, according to father's recollection. And they drove up to it. They park out front, operate their way inside, and it's fucking carnage. Think government lab in season 2 of Stranger Things. It's just fucking nuts. They clear a few rooms when one of their guys gets murked by one of these tiny fuckers. They light it up and keep going. There are offices with names on them. Some American, some Chinese, some Chilean. There are bodies everywhere. It's crazy, right? So, 2 more guys get injured and they're moved outside to the truck. The rest of them move downstairs to the tunnels. It's a secret lab, and it is gigantic. They have a Strider in a cage. It's that fucking big. Or at least, they used to. Many of the cages are broken open, and there are dead bodies everywhere. Jones doesn't say much about this stuff, other than that there are tunnels with bullet trains in them, with destinations like Hong Kong, New York, and Melbourne, a city for every major country out there. They find a cage that has been ripped into with 2 spiders in it. They are eating children. In Antarctica, there are children. Shouldn't be fucking possible. It's been known for a while that China plays a part in its huge amount of human trafficking. Now we know where the bodies go. They found a few scientists and moved them to a different base. Exterminate most of the fuckers in there and move out. It took them almost 18 hours of pure fighting to clear that place out. So guys, I guess we know what's really going on, and I'm very, very grateful to get all of this out here. Honestly, my dad would kill me if he knew I have shared this information, but honestly, I'm sick and fucking tired. I remember a time where I didn't know, where I grasped at straws for an answer to questions I could barely understand. Here it is, X. Here are your answers. I'm back, friends, and I got news. As I said, this Anana always delivers. Yesterday I said 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern, and on my clock, it's 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. I can't find the last thread I was in. It was sometime around midnight last night that I joined it. Ready to get up to date. So, the hard drive died a while ago, and my dad replaced it with a micro SD. Had to lie to get him to open the case, so no paper with name, but compare the desk, and it's the same. Apple IIsi hard drives didn't last long enough to be able to get the information off of them. They are a 30-year-old computer. Apparently my dad replaced a hard drive with a SCSI to micro SD card. And the drive is long gone. Convenient? Yes. Disappointing? Also yes. But I'd rather come back and tell you than ghost and be regarded as a shill. It's entirely possible he held onto it. He holds on to everything. So I would have to go through boxes and boxes of old electronics to find that 40 megabyte hard drive that came with it. I'll go look and send a pic of what I would have to work with. Gentlemen, I found 2 Apple hard drives from the 90s. Here they are. Wanted to update before I got the upload off my phone. Photo of the backs off. Copyright 1988 on the chip for both of them. I'ma take the one with the Apple sticker on it apart and see if I can find why it broke. Yeah, guys, I can't get info out of the drive without professional help. I'll go to a data recovery guy and get it out for you. I'm in too deep for this now. Why are you taking apart hard drives? Holy shit, stop, what the fuck are you doing?